So, yeah, one more question maybe to Paul also, because of this whole area of opinion, free opinion, and so on. I mean, what can be done, do you think, on an European level to solve the problem that certain countries, limit opinions, punish people for their opinion, or limit freedom of speech in some kind? So, what can you do on a European level to, yeah, counteract what countries might do on a country level in that respect?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with one of the comments here in the chat. The EU is part of the problem, not the solution. That's completely correct in my opinion. A lot of what's being passed at the national level is being first driven at the EU level. And the thing is, once you go down this route, there's never enough censorship that's enough. The EU and national countries across Europe, every single year, they're just pushing more and more censorship. The amount of laws that have been passed in the last decade to silence speech. This must be the only time in history where people are putting forward an argument that says, in order to save democracy, we have to censor our citizens. And that's basically the European approach. And so you have the EU right now trying to make hate speech an EU-wide crime. That puts it on the list of the most serious crimes in Europe, alongside human trafficking, drug trafficking, terrorism, and so forth. So they're putting a speech offense on that list. The Digital Services Act, which comes into force now, Lucas Mandel talking about regulation. The Digital Services Act is one of the most convoluted, complex pieces of legislation that has, I think, ever been passed in order to regulate speech in the digital age. And in terms of how it is going to operate in practice, it is very intransparent, I would say, lacking many mechanisms for we as citizens to be able to engage in that. And so we have a problem here at the national level, but it's not being helped by what's taking place at the European level. And I would say that the driving force is actually coming from the European Union level, first and foremost. So I agree that it's part of the problem, not the solution. I think Lucas Mandel has a different opinion than me on that, based on some of the comments that he said. But I maintain my position, which is a lack of trust based on good present day and historical reasons for why we should entrust more and more power to those who hold authority over us, in order to be able to determine the sorts of opinions that we can and can't share. And a lot of the chat is related to Ursula von der Leyen and COVID. And I just think back to those times, basic questions that were not allowed to be asked. For example, where did COVID come from? It's a fair question. It's not a conspiracy theory question. That is obviously has to be a legitimate part of the discussion. That was shut down immediately as a conspiracy theory. And only later did people start to say, well, maybe the information has changed. Maybe that's not such a conspiracy theory. The efficacy of certain things that were put forward, including vaccines, where we were told they were safe and effective. The president of the United States, Joe Biden at the time, said, and this is a paraphrase, but it's close to a direct quote, if you get the vaccine, you won't get COVID. Well, I don't know how many of us have been vaccinated and subsequently had COVID, but I suspect everyone. And so it just goes to show the dangers of trying to regulate, I think, in this area. And I don't even think that we can neatly draw a line here between facts are facts and they're established, and opinions, okay, you can say what you want, because the whole point of science is that these studies and these facts, they do change as new information comes to light. Very few things are set in stone over time. And so I think that my concern is that we as European citizens have essentially sleptwalked into this situation, and very clear historical precedent to say that once you lose some of these, it's far quicker to lose them than it is to get them back. And that's the uphill battle that I think we're going to be facing now in the decades ahead.